Hello everyone, by Luca Mazzucchelli. Today I have a special guest who is a kind of myth for me. Past president of the APA, famous researcher. When I was a student at Bicocca University, I studied his incredible Stanford prison experiment. It's a pleasure for me to talk with Professor Philip Zimbardo. Thanks, Professor, for your time today.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here talking about many aspects of psychology, including at the end, the new Hollywood movie called The Stanford Prison Experiment. And during my experiment, the reason I'm wearing these glasses is in order to dehumanize the relationship of prisoners and guards and prison staff with the prisoners, we all had to wear these silver reflecting sunglasses. It was an idea I got from the movie Cool Hand Luke with Paul Newman. But this is the real me.
Perfect. Today's topic is violence and how people can change and suddenly become cruel. I would like to ask you some questions. The first question, Prof, is what do you think when you see on television or on a newspaper the picture of a beheaded war prisoner?
The world is now, in a curious way, going back centuries. That in the olden days, I'm not sure what era, beheading people publicly, lynching people publicly, putting people in stocks to humiliate was typical. In Rome, in the Colosseum, we had Christians thrown to the lions. So it was an era where people were insensitive to human suffering. In fact, human suffering was a spectacle that you would pay to see people, gladiators, kill each other. And the good news is, since then until now, that kind of inhumanity, that kind of ugliness has disappeared. Sadly, with the new rise of terrorism around the world, it has reignited. So the horrific pictures of terrorists beheading people on television. A recent case where an individual man beheaded someone and put it on, I think, Facebook. So it's really a loss of basic humanity that we are experiencing. Now, the sad thing for me is that we, as their enemy called terrorists, the people who follow them think of them as heroes. Okay? People who are suicide bombers, people who kill themselves in the process of killing the enemy, do it for an ideology, believing that they are doing the Lord's work. The Lord there, if Islam, is Allah. So that in killing innocent women and children and strangers from the enemy, you are persuaded by the people who train you that you are doing the work of Allah. Now, we know this is a lie. This is not in Islamic tradition. This is modern cult recruiters. So, for example, the newest terrorist movement is called ISIS, Islamic State. Unlike Al-Qaeda, unlike Hamas, unlike the other movements, this is a very sophisticated modern movement, meaning they use all available social media to recruit young people. So that they recruit on Twitter, they recruit on Facebook. They have their own media center where they make videos. And they attract lonely, uneducated, disenfranchised people. And they now target Germany, France, England specifically. And the evidence is that since 2012, they have recruited more than 4,000 foreign fighters to their cause. And so this is something that people in the West have to be aware of and scared of, because this is a very powerful recruiting tool. In the past, what would happen is, and I studied this, I was part of a group of trying to understand the nature of terrorism at Stanford University, that what would happen is there would be a rally, let's say in Palestine, against Jews. And then there'd be older men who would identify young men and women who are saying, kill the Jews, bring them together in a small group and say, do you really believe this? Are you willing to join a movement against Jews? And then they train them how to be a suicide bomber. And then to make them think you are a hero, that when you die, not only will you be sitting at the right hand of Allah, but your family will sit with you. And then they would make posters holding a gun with a bandana, in your town. So you would become a hero, but it is not heroic to kill innocent women and children for any reason. Okay.
That's clear. Prof, do you think that all people in particular situation can become cruel? Or there are some elements prevention that can save us from this transformation?
Oh yes, so in general, my research over many, many decades has focused on what are the situational, circumstantial forces that can get ordinary, good people to do bad things. And there's much research in psychology to prove this in many areas. And there's a whole recipe we can talk about. What are the psychological forces that get people to move across the line from good to bad? But in every research and in every natural situation in the world, there are always some people who resist. Let's say on the average 10% or 20%. So even when the majority in research does the terrible thing, there's always a small minority that resists, okay? So the question is, what is the difference? What is about them that's unique? Now, we have not studied in enough detail the people who resist powerful social influence, because we focus on the people who give in, because that's fascinating. And in my book, The Lucifer Effect, this is one of the basic things issues I raise. We know how to make good people do bad things. Every military in the world trains ordinary soldiers to kill the enemy, okay? And the enemy, I'm killing you, you're killing me. So the enemy is an abstraction, okay? It's the other. But there's no military that trains people to understand and care for the enemy. Now, this should be the realm of religion. But sadly, over hundreds of years or 1,000 years, more people have died in the name of religion than any other reason. Start even before the Crusades, the Inquisition, and now the Islamic movement. So curiously, the place where people should learn ethics, who should learn human dignity, in many places are doing the opposite. Now, the key is where religion teaches you that we are the only right religion, everyone else is false, okay? Under those circumstances, the people in that religion, whether it's Christian, whether it's Muslim, or whatever it is, have to believe that their job is to eliminate people who don't believe. So you first try to transform them. You first try to convert them to your religion. And then if it fails, you kill.
If I've understood correctly, you believe that the cause of people's transformation from good to evil is the system in which they are in and the relationships with the power. In your opinion, where does one's responsibility end with regard to the actions he is undergoing?
Okay, so it's really asking two questions. One is the research by the Stanford Prison Experiment, and I did earlier research on the power of anonymity, making people feel anonymous. Also tied in is the research of Stanley Milgram on obedience to authority. That research says that the ordinary people, whether ordinary men in Milgram research or even intelligent college students in my research, can easily be led to do very bad things to other people if they get caught up in the power of the situation. What that means is getting them to play a role, have rules, have procedures, have social norms. In this situation, which is different than everything else, this is what people do. And you get rewarded for doing that thing. And so in a funny way, you change negative into positive. So in the study by Stanley Milgram, where he got up to 1,000 participants, mostly men, but he had some women, 20 years old to 50, ordinary people in America, to deliver a painful, in some cases, they thought could be lethal shock to kill someone else, a stranger. Why did they do it? They did it because they believed they were helping rather than hurting. So what's critical is to understand the semantics of terrorism, the semantics of evil, so that the person who's doing it, the soldier who kills, is not killing, he is saving he is a patriot saving the good people in his nation. So that, and again, in the Milgram study, it says we want to help people improve their memory. How are you going to do it? By punishing errors. How would you punish errors? By killing people who make too many errors. Okay. Now, in the Stanford Prison study, all we said was we are creating a model of American prisons, which in general are places of punishment. And even though the students in our experiment were college students who never were in prison, who didn't know about prison, they knew in their mind prisons are about power. Guards have the power to dominate prisoners, and prisoners can rebel, that's their power, but ultimately they get crushed. So in my study, by putting ordinary young intelligent college students into uniforms, giving them symbols of power, a billy club, the silver reflecting sunglasses, handcuffs, the situation transformed them from being ordinary average college students into being prison guards, many of whom, but not all, did cruel, sadistic things to the prisoners.
Prof, how can we transform ourselves in heroes?
Okay, this is a wonderful question because I have asked that question myself 8 years ago. I gave a talk at the TED conference, I think 2008, and it was really my journey from creating evil to inspiring heroism. So you know, many people have studied evil over generations. Theologians, dramatists, poets, sociologists, criminologists, but they study evil from the outside, looking. I wanted, in the prison study, create evil from the inside, take ordinary people, put them on a stage. It's like a Pirandello play. Take 6 characters, only had 24 characters, put them on a stage, and then we see what they do. And so now we know that when people are anonymous, when there's dehumanization, when there are rules and roles to play, when they're in costumes, when everyone is doing the same thing, when there is a powerful authority who's organizing things, these are the conditions of the situation that can get people to move across the line between good and evil. Now, we have been trained in every nation, every people, that there is a line that separates out good people like us from bad people like them, okay? And we have been trained, mostly through our religion and school and family, that line is fixed, impermeable. But it turns out it's not. It's permeable. Good people can be seduced across, as I said, the children where I grew up. And also, the good news is bad people can be rehabilitated to go this way. So it's really understanding the nature of good and evil, not as personality traits, not as things inside of us, but really as attributes of human nature. That is, every one of us has the capacity to do enormous evil, and at the same time has the capacity to do enormous good. And my argument is, what brings that out is the situation that you live in and that you grow up in. So we know if you grow up as a child in a war zone, if you grow up as a child in a migrant camp, if you grow up as a child where your parents are in slave labor, If you grew up as a child where your mother is caught up in sex trafficking, your options are limited. What you're going to do is just what people around you are doing. So when we say, how do we change that? It's really understanding the power of situations, but then to ask the big question that I ask in the Lucifer Effect: what is the system that creates the situation? So what is the system is power. It's legal. So there's a law which says you must do. It's religious. The religious dogma says this is the way we see the world. It's economic. It's where the money power is. It's media power. The media says this is what is admired. This is what is acceptable in our culture. And it's historical cultural. This is what we have been doing for years and years. So it's to understand why a particular person does something terrible. In general, in the past, psychologists have focused only about trying to understand what's in the person, personality traits. We also have personality disposition. Is he an introvert or an extrovert? Is he a moral or immoral person? I'm saying that's the beginning, but you must always realize every human being is on the stage of life. You're never alone. So there are other people around you. So the metaphor of the actor. So you're actor and there's other co-actors. You're on a stage, there's an audience. You're in a costume and you're there on the stage for a fixed time, usually 2 hours. When it's over, you take the costume off, the audience leaves, the other actors say goodbye, and you go back to where you were. The problem is, for many people, the acting becomes permanent because you say, it's my identity, this is what I am. I am a terrorist, okay? I am a soldier. I am a manager. I am a member of the Sicilian Mafia, or Cosa Nostra in Naples. So it becomes your identity. So you start out being an actor, acting a role, and then the role transforms and you become the role.
The role. Prof, last question. Would you like to tell something about your last movies?
So I'm very excited because I'm excited at this day in July 2015 that I can say to the world after 44 years, because we did the Stanford Prison Study in 1971, another generation ago, that there is an incredibly good Hollywood movie about to appear next week in New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and then around the world, called The Stanford Prison Experiment.
Fantastic.
And it's a very well-made movie, very powerful, almost overwhelming. And what's unique about it, the whole movie is about the experiment. It's not a story which has the experiment on the side. The experiment is front and center. And so what I'm hoping is that for the first time, the audience will be looking at the screen as if they were looking at a one-way mirror, through a one-way mirror, observing what me and my team were observing, looking in on a study, but then also they're observing the observers. They're observing me and how I change over time. And so I think for the first time, general audience can appreciate how, again, ordinary, intelligent, young men recruited in an experiment, knowing it's an experiment, being prisoners of guard by a flip of the coin, in a very short time, one day, can become a prisoner or a guard. And in those roles, do things that would be unimaginable to them before they were in the situation. And then it became ordinary. To be cruel, sadistic became ordinary by the third day. You did it without even thinking. And then each day, the level of abuse, the level of humiliation, the level of degradation of guards against the prisoners got worse and worse. Now, what's interesting is, and it relates to your earlier question, not all guards did bad things to the prisoners, but no guard who could be labeled a good guard ever once minimized, prevented the bad guards from doing what they were doing. So there were 3 shifts. Guards worked 8-hour shifts. Prisoners lived there 24/7. And on each shift, there was at least one guard or two who did bad things to the prisoners. And on each shift, there was always at least one guard or two who didn't. But never did the good guards ever tell the bad guards, make a joke. you're too much into this. You're like a real guard. Or we get $15 a day if we do nothing. Why don't we just play cards? So no good guard ever made the prison better for the prisoners by reducing the abuse of the good guards. In the same way, in our study in 5 days, 5 prisoners had breakdowns, had to be released. No prisoner who survived ever gave emotional support to the prisoners who were breaking down. They didn't just break down, it was hour after hour crying. We have no evidence that they ever said, gee, I'm really sorry, try to get it together. Or when a prisoner was released, they vanished. No one ever said, I wonder what happened to Charlie, I wonder what happened to 872, whatever. So in a sense, when the study was over, I spent a whole day called psychological debriefing. First with all the prisoners for a couple of hours, then all the guards, then together, prisoners and guards. And I was able to say to them that this is a time for moral re-education, because all of us did bad things, starting with me. That is, I made the mistake of adopting the role of prison superintendent rather than only being the principal research investigator. Because as a research investigator, I would be back, objective. I would have ended the study much earlier. As a prison superintendent, my job and my focus was on the guards more than the prisoners. My focus was on maintaining the integrity of the prison, keeping it going as long as possible. Okay? And so that was a mistake. And in that new role, I saw guards humiliating prisoners, causing suffering, and I did not stop it. Now, what's dramatic is, as a professor at Stanford, was considered one of the most caring, most loving professors of students ever. I had no boundary between me and students. I worked to be a friend of students. And suddenly, within a day or two, I'm seeing students suffering, and it's a check mark. Toilet run, parole board hearing. And so again, part of the message of the power of the situation was the way in which it transformed me, not just the guards. Now, what I want to end with is, in the study, the way the study really ended was a very heroic act by a young woman. I had been dating a former student of mine in the summer of the study, Christina Maslach. Mm-hmm. She had just graduated from Stanford, had been my thesis student, just got a job at University of California, Berkeley, and we had just moved in together in San Francisco, thinking we live together, if it works, we get married. But I loved her, we loved each other. And on Thursday night, the study began Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Thursday night, she was in the library, and I said, why don't you come down after you finish, and we'll go to dinner Thursday night. And when she comes down, what she sees is, again, through the video monitor, what happens every night at 10 o'clock, it's the last time prisoners could go to a real toilet. Because after that, they had to urinate or defecate in buckets in their cell, which they hated because it made everything smell terrible. But the guards used that as an opportunity, the last opportunity to humiliate the prisoners. So they put bags over their head, paper bags, chained them leg to leg, made them walk, like prisoners in a gang, yelling, screaming, hitting. And I look at this as she looks, and for me it was check mark, 10 o'clock toilet run. No. And she begins to cry, runs out. We have a big argument. And I say to her, what's wrong with you? Don't you see there's the power of the situation? Nobody's ever seen this so dramatically. And she said, how could you see what I see and not be upset? She said, I know you as a caring, loving person, and you are allowing young men to suffer. They're not prisoners, they're not guards, they're boys. And you are responsible. I keep yelling at her. And finally she says, wait. If this is the real you, I don't want to continue my relationship with you. And at that point, it was like a double slap in the face. Dun, dun, dun. I said, wait a minute, you're right. And at that moment, I realized, oh my God, I have been transformed. I think she said, you have been transformed. I said, you're right, we have to end the study. And so this is like 11 o'clock at night, and so I had to figure out how to change the next day. Now, in the movie, they have the confrontation with her and me, but they do not make that the end of the movie, because they want it to be more dramatic. So what happens is she leaves, the actress, Olivia Thirlby, she was in the movie Juno, and the person playing me, Billy Crudup, he was in a movie Almost Famous. I go back to the dungeon, and I turn on the television, I look to see what the guards are doing, and it's the worst sexual abuses going on in the movie for 10 minutes. The guards are saying, your female camel, your male camel, hump them, meaning at sodomite. And the guards are yelling and screaming and pushing together. And it's really overwhelming, even for me to look at it. But it really happened like that. And then I go in and say, the study is over. So they wanted a really powerful, dramatic ending. So that's the only thing in the movie which was not accurate. And they did it because they wanted more powerful, dramatic ending, which it is. It's almost overwhelming. So I'm excited to see reaction of people, ordinary people around the world. I think it will be good for psychology to say psychological research can have an impact in various ways.
Absolutely. Philippe, thank you very much for this interview, and I hope to see you soon again. And thank you. Ciao e grazie.
Ciao.